Hi all. So today is the last session for our Az400 DevOps expert exam. So this session is purely on instrumentation strategy. So as an instrumentation name suggests, it is more on the monitoring, reporting, logging and all those things. So from exam perspective, as we have covered in the previous sessions as well, the modules will have some weightage. So in this particular module, you have 9% weightage. And let's see what topics we have as a part of our agenda. So in configuring monitoring for DevOps environment, basically we have to learn more on the Azure Monitor, log analytics, and then there are different sub-products or components you can say from an Azure, which you will integrate with these monitoring. Now, if you have clearly seen DevOps as an environment, right? This is more from an implementation, development, and all those things. So ideally, the monitoring in this reporting is very limited to what you have out of box in your DevOps tools, right? But here we will talk from a monitoring because what we are trying to do, we are trying to have a DevOps environment set up. So you will have a development environment for which you need traces, similarly logs. So that is where the monitoring comes into picture. Similarly, for from the implementation perspective, there will be different workloads, there will be applications, there will be infrastructure, there will be networking, there are n number of things which makes up your infrastructure or environment. Okay, so mainly from an agenda per se, you have to go through log analytics and then Azure Monitor. Okay, because whole and soul, everything gets integrated with an Azure Monitor as a tool. So that is where you have to learn these tools in depth. Also, we will see how the telemetry flow from an infrastructure, container, application. So all these things are basically you do in and out, but then what exactly to look for is what you will see in this particular topic. Okay. Similarly, from monitoring on GitHub as well as getting the insights, I think you pretty much know what is available out of. But once we go to these particular topics, I will show you practically how it looks like and what are the available tools, how you have to integrate if there anything you need to do from an Azure Monitor per se. Okay. And obviously the alerts and notification is what the last which you see, which is whatever you have available out of box within those tools. Okay. So from the first topic, you have monitoring where you will learn log analytics and Azure Monitor, and then you will see what kind of telemetry you can get from an infrastructure application, etc. Then we will move on to the GitHub, and then finally the notifications from the Azure pipelines and GitHub. So that makes up your first topic. Then second is mainly purely on your application insight, because there will be a lot of performance indicators from the network, from an application, your traces. So that is where this is pretty much heavily on your application insight, how you collect the telemetry, similarly how you enable your distributed tracing, and finally most important is your Kusto query language. So this is an inbuilt, you can say, out of box tool where you can use the query language to get the details, or I would say the structured information from whatever you have available from the logs or any particular metrics, and then have a graph out of that. Okay, so that is where the Kusto query language will be helpful for this particular topic. Okay, so from exam weightage per se, this is what you have. Okay, so let's get started. Now, first and foremost, before we drill into the Azure Monitor, let's see what we have out of box, right? What kind of the different data sets we have. Okay, so at left hand side, if you see the data sources, this is pretty much whatever you have in Azure platform. So if you see the left hand side from apps, infrastructure, Azure platform, this is nothing but your Azure platform. So whatever it may be from a platform, application, infrastructure, everything can be fetched. Logs and metrics can be fetched from that particular to the Azure Monitor to get the valuable insights out of that. Okay, but doesn't stop here. You can also integrate the other clouds as well as, I would say, your own physical environment, data centers, or I would say an hybrid. So that is what the custom sources is here. Now, what kind of metrics we monitor as part of this is your data chunks, you can say, or data catalogs, you can say. Okay. So first and foremost distinction is your metrics. This is nothing but your performance indicators for infrastructure, for your application, for your containers. So that is where they fit in. Okay. So we have to get those kind of the data before we can have the monitoring out of it. Other thing is logs. Now logs are by default, you might have seen system logs, you might have seen application logs. So those kind of the logs you will get in some shape and form, which we have to run the query on top of that and finally present it in some shape and form which is acceptable. Okay. And third type of the data you see is the traces. Now this is important, like while you are doing the end-to-end transaction flow, correct? So where if there is some issues, you will be able to make out where the latency is. If there is something being breakout, you will be able to make out through the traces. So that is where the traces are more important, the data form out of which we are able to get a valuable insight. And the fourth one is the changes. Now this is more on the auditing purpose. Who did that change? And if there is any problem after that change, we will be able to revert knowing what exactly changed and then how uh, this particular data is helping us. Okay. So from the data per se, from the catalogs per se, metrics, logs, traces, and changes, what you have to remember. Okay. Now, out of this, what you will do is you have to provide some insight, right? So this can be related to your application. This can be related to your Kubernetes or container environment, your infrastructure, network, and a number of things from which you can get an insight. And also you can send these data directly for visualization. These are the visualization tool. And if you want to have a historical, obviously, as I said, we will going to learn about the log analytics workspace. That is where your analytics space will come into picture, where you store this data of whatever is coming in real time so that you can have historical log analytics. On top of that, you will be able to do what has changed. Similarly, you will also be able to make sure the performance, what was a 1 month before versus today, how it behaves. Okay, so this is the analyze part of that. Also, to some extent, I think you will also play on with how exactly these particular AI ops or the alerts and notifications will work through. Okay, so at the end of the day, while we are doing this, we have to make sure that these particular Azure Monitor, log analytics, we thoroughly understand. And from exam perspective, remember, we don't have any practical exam for that. But if you are doing in and out from your day-to-day practical, then you will be able to make sure for your client environments, you are aware of these things, and should be also helpful from exam perspective. Okay. So moving ahead, let's look into what the log analytics look like. Okay. Now this is more on integration part, so we will not get more into the depth. I think monitoring was more important part. So let's move on to the log analytics directly. So in log analytics, what we have to do here is from the workspace, as I said, you need something to store your data before you can get the valuable insights out of that. So for that, we need to create some storage space. So that is where the log analytics will provide you. So how you will go in Azure, if you go and search for log analytic workspace, it will provide you the option to create one. So that is what you are going to see in screen. Also, if you see here, this clearly says it's a logical storage unit where you can log data is collected and stored, right? So this is what we are actually trying to do. And from where you want to create this workspace or region, ideally your subscription should be able to manage everything. But I think depending upon what kind of data you are collecting or what is uh, the amount or volume of the data, you have to make decision whether you want to have a log analytics workspace per region versus per subscription. Okay, that will be the distinction which you have to make sure that you understand that these log analytic workspaces are actually useful to you and it is not like from if you are say within subscription, if you are using more than 3 to 4 regions, and then in that case, if you are using per subscription log analytic workspace, the data will move in and out of region, so you are going to pay for egress traffic. But if it is not, you don't have a lot of traffic, then in that case it's okay to go by subscription model. But if you want to have the monitoring of each and every infrastructure component or the platform component or application, I would suggest go for a region wise. That way you are very streamlined on what you are trying to monitor per region. Also, you will be able to correlate. But challenge here is if you have an environment fetch stretching across multiple regions, then obviously you will get one region at a time information then versus the complete. So that is the I think pros and cons you have to consider while creating the log analytic workspace. Okay. So now moving ahead, I think this is how you will create the log analytic workspace. And at first place, in every workload, you will find, say suppose here we have an example of storage account. I'm able to see the diagnostic settings. Now where it will go, it will I'm just, let me zoom it out for you. So this is going to send it to the log analytic workspace which we have created above. Okay. And while we add the log and diagnostic settings, what kind of the data, because this is an storage component, I'm able to have the diagnostic of storage read, write, delete, and transaction. So this changes, parameters changes based on what kind of information you are trying to uh, fetch, or I would say what kind of information we want to monitor. Okay, in a simple sense. So this diagnostic settings will provide you, and if you go ahead and send it to the log analytic workspace, it will also provide you like what is the uh, relative categories you are selecting. And then from there on, I think you can also archive, stream to event hub, even partner solutions, if you have any third party integrations. Okay, but in nutshell, what we are trying to say here is every workload which is in Azure will provide you some kind of logging facility or even sending the metrics to the log analytic workspace, which will be your base platform for getting any monitoring data. Okay, so that is what you have to remember. And for this, as is the storage account, what you can do simply is you try uploading files, deleting files, or I would say blobs. From that, I think you should be able to get the sample data into your storage account. And to show you how exactly it from the storage account, you can see the queries. If you go to the logs blade, you should be able to see which these are the default available to you out of box. These are storage blob logs. Okay, so if you see the time generated, we are saying that greater than 3 days. Okay, and summarized by the different number of operations we have done and sort by the count, and also render pie chart means you plot the pie chart. Now in this, if you clearly see, what we are trying to do here is we are trying to get what kind of operations we have done on this particular. So what we did is we just ran a simple query which is available to us out of box. We just generated the that logs and plotted the logs with the help of this query. Okay, from the logs we just ran the query so that we get a useful information, and then plotted the pie chart. Now this gives us a clear information about what kind of operations were done in past 3 days, and we were also able to see and distinguish. So this is very useful information for each and every monitoring step which we are taking. Now, from DevOps exam perspective, the reason, as I said earlier as well, you will learn the monitoring strategy. It may not be directly for your only for your DevOps. It will be overall, because once you do the deployment, once you do the development, you are actually either doing for the platform, application, or infrastructure. Accordingly, your monitoring strategy should look like end to end, right? So that is where we are learning this in an instrumentation strategy, so that you are aware of what is going around with that. If you are running pipeline, obviously you might be doing some kind of deployments. Similarly, for your build jobs, you will be doing some kind of testing in terms of a development environment. So you need to know where exactly that happened, historical data, what got changed, what got audit So from those auditing purposes, you should be aware of these things. Hence, this is part of our DevOps exam. Okay. So as I said, this is more from a theoretical per se. You will not have any practical exam for this, but knowing this from your practical experience with working with the different clients, I think you should be able to put this through. Okay. Now, whatever I have shown you above, this is the rendering the chart. But from this, there is the, if you see this, you also have a the tabular format, which will also give you, if you don't want to see the chart directly, there is also the results tab, from where you will see the actual count of whatever we have seen here. Okay. So make sure you understand how we are running this query, and this is from your storage account or whichever component you are trying to have. Okay, so what we did is we just added the diagnostic setting. We passed on this to the log analytic workspace which we have created, and and it is straightforward. We were able to create the chart out of it. Okay, so this is an end-to-end example which you should remember how log analytic workspace work and how you are able to plot this on your Azure or whichever platform you are trying to monitor. Okay, so I will just pause here for a while before we proceed. Okay, now let's look about the telemetry one by one. So first of all, I think if you remember that we have run the OSI model long way back while we were learning or during our school days or college days. Okay, so in those, I think we were clearly have seen the way OSI model looks like, the layer sevens, right? So in this layer sevens, I think you may have seen, at least in our day-to-day life, the networking, that is an IP. Okay, so that is where the network insights come through. So from the infrastructure and everything, the storage will come into picture. So networking, and then moving ahead or going above, I would say you will see the complete TCP IP as a model. So you have to get monitoring of that. Similarly, moving ahead, you will get a session data. That means whenever you establish a session, so those kind of the monitoring also you can get through. And finally, you have seen the presentation and the application layers. So why I'm giving you this example of OSI model is it is easy to correlate what we are trying to get insights from. So if you see a network, storage, VM, application, and overall as a platform. So these are different types of telemetry. So if you remember the OSI model, you can correlate this very well, and also make sure that even though that was from a networking per se, ideally we are trying to get a monitoring at each and every layer. Okay, so if I have to bucket it out, say Kubernetes is more of complete as a platform. Application sits at an application layer, VM sits at an infrastructure layer, which is a mixture of a networking and some kind of the machines running on top of that. So you are actually having the more than two layers into this to get the insights out of that. Okay, so let's look at from the network per se what we can make out from an example. Okay, so let's look into the network inside. So at first place, if you have seen the what kind of the tools we have, we want to obviously get, if once we are in a particular regions, we or whatever the deployments we have done from the Azure per se in here, or whatever the machines we have deployed, it gives you a visual map of how your deployments are scattered around different regions. Okay, so these are different regions where you are actually having your presence, and it clearly showing that it is showing the 10 locations which you are being working on. Now, important thing to know here is what all things we can do from a network when I go to an Azure monitor, and how do I check what exactly the metrics I can look into. So from the network per se, I will just zoom it out for you. From network inside, if you see, these are pretty much application gateway, firewall, whatever the connections, load balancing, any networking component you have seen through, you should be able to monitor where they are working, including the network interfaces or also the route tables. Okay, so make sure you are adding those particular for the monitoring and having that available as a part of your monitoring strategy. Okay, including the connections. Now ER is express route and VPN connection. These are very important if you are connecting to any particular sites. Okay, so physical data centers or any particular sites you're trying to connect through express route and VPN, that those all things are important from a network per se. Okay, now going ahead, what exactly it will give. Now for each of these you can drill down. Okay, you can drill down and see what exactly is going. Now say here it is clearly giving you that with these particular there are two alerts. So this is site to Azure and this VNet to the site. Both these connections are down, and if you drill down further for those particular alerts, I'm just going to those. Okay, so it will show you what exactly is wrong with this particular. Okay, this particular settings, or I would say this connection, what exactly is going down, whether this is for a particular site or this is for particular. So these kind of information you can get from the, this gives you end to end of where exactly the problem is. Okay, so in short, what I want to show you here is the alerts first of all, and the different endpoints you are monitoring, right from an IP, routes, application gateway, virtual machines, etc., and finally getting the how exactly they are performing. Okay, so there are ideally, I would show there are ideally three tabs. So to show you in a particular, I will just go back to the tabs again. So you see, this is network health, right? So this was giving you the complete information about what are the application devices you have. Second tab was on the your connectivity, right? So connectivity tab will give you the what is going wrong, and as we have already seen, there are some alerts. So what kind of the digging we can do and where it is failing. Okay, so here is an on-premise which I was trying to tell you, which is going why they are failing and all those things. So you can just drill down further to see what exactly is taking the problem, whether it is a network link itself or whether it is a component which has failed. So these kind of information you can get out of box. And finally, the last which you can see is the traffic. So from network per se, the network component itself, then it connectivity, and then finally the traffic. These are the three things which you have to monitor from network insights for this particular topic. Okay, so again, I will just pause here for a while what I have shown you at the top. Okay, I'm just going to the this blade. Yeah, this gives more perfect information about what are the different components you are monitoring. Okay, so I think let's move on to the next topic. So I'll just close this out and move on to the, so let's look into the storage insights. Now with storage, I think it's purely different. Now here it will be more from the what kind of the storage account you're monitoring, what is its capacity. Okay, so every monitoring strategy based on the component which you're using, obviously the metrics changes, right? So here is whatever the subscription you are using, and within the subscription there are different storage account, and what kind of the latency you are getting from the server as well as from the uh, the client is what will be available to you. Okay, so basically this is more from the uh, capacity and the storage account. Okay, so I will just, so this is end to end and this is server latency, and they have clearly shown you what exactly you're trying to get. Now here, if wherever there will be problem, like if there are any particular errors, I think you can just drill down further the way you did. And here, remember in here, specific to the dashboards or a workspace, I think they will also give you the name of workbook. Workbooks are nothing but grouping of a specific monitoring, or I would say the logs which you are trying to cater for the monitoring is what the workbook will look like. It consists of whichever the subscription you are using, storage account, and what kind of information which you want to group based on the time. So remember, this is giving you the parameters as well as the logs the way we have for the complete monitoring strategy. Okay, and similarly you can also have the value in columns based on this or type of errors. I think you can pretty much customize this to whatever the needs are based on monitoring strategy you want to have or your sites which you're trying to use. Okay, and the workbook will also give you the what kind of the availability or capacity you can see. So first was an overview which you are looking through. Okay, so this is what we were looking through, an overview. Other thing is from the capacity, where you will go to the capacity and see what kind of the blob capacity you are using, what are the files, and what you have out of box. Okay, so I think for us storage is not that critical. So I think we will just bypass this and go ahead for the other insights. But I think just to show you that this is also available to you, and this is coming from, if you either go to the particular storage account and click insights, or go to the monitor and then click within that storage, is both the way you can look into this particular. Okay, similarly you can look into how it is performing and also getting to the different metrics. Okay, so I think you will should be able to do in and out. Okay, so let's move on to the another from an infrastructure per se. Now VM is where I think we have seen a lot of, because this is where we all started when from infrastructure service. Okay, so out of box as an Azure, you will have something from an Azure scale sets virtual machine. Similarly, you will also some of the machines bought from an Azure Arc, which is nothing but management, which is bringing those physical machines live to your environment. And other will be obviously the on-premise virtual machines which you're connecting through the your connectivity, whether it is express route or VPN gateway. Okay, so these all things basically based on what you're trying to monitor, you will be able to have the data out of this. Now this again, uh, few things the way we have seen in the networking, those were networking components, but as being the VM, I think VM will have the storage networking. Also you will have a CPU and the memory, or the, I would say, the all compute resources. So based on that, all the diagnostics and the users data, you have to go and enable them within your components to get this information, or I would say a VM to get this information out of this. And if you see this again, the way we are seeing for the other, as this is particular, you can see the machine, complete machine, and what kind of CPU, available memory. These are the basic stuff which you will see out of box. And even if you have connecting these machines to where your connectivity is, you can also get the application map out of it. And or if any application is running on top, which ports are open, and then which are the servers connected to it, and those all the information you can get out of. Again, see, this is the view workbook. This is basic. As I said, you are grouping this particular monitoring in a particular, so that I know for this particular resource, this particular region, I'm just making sure that his workbook is used for which client. I can do by client, I can do by department, I can do by specific resources or components. This purely depends upon us how the monitoring strategy we decide. Okay, so make sure you understand how we can group them and according. The reason I'm giving you this public documentation is because this is how you have to learn through. If something changes tomorrow, I think you can come back here, or if the additions or deletions, you can again come back here and look into these documentation which is available on Azure. Okay, so from the exam per se, I think there is no much on top of this, but I think and there will not be much changes to this. But if there are any changes in future, maybe 1 year down the line, you can always come and refer to this documentation which is available online. Okay, so going ahead, now this is what the VM Insight look like. Now application insight, I think this we will go into the depth, but to give you uh, an overhead of overview of what exactly it looked like, I think this is something you might have seen. Okay, so this is one particular application. It is being available online, and how it is the availability, or what are the traces, what kind of the timelines, how the traffic is flowing. These all information you can get out of box and application insight. So we have in-depth particular topics for this. So we will come to this in more within a second topic which we have already said. But overall, if you see, we will cover all of these whatever you are seeing here. Okay, so alerts, monitorings, logs, workbooks. See here, I think it also giving the you create an interactive reporting and the dashboard and application monitoring. Basically, you are creating, or I would say, filtering your data to specific needs, whether this is per department, per client, or something. So that is where the workbooks are very important. Okay, so how you go through this and the logical model. Logical model is nothing but how you ingest that and how you get them in a different data catalogs or data marts, and then finally present it for an experience or the dashboarding. Okay, so let us come to this application insight in depth in a second topic, but I think it is important for to give you information what kind of the telemetry we can monitor. Uh, Now this is something I think most of us are dealing with in day-to-day life, whether you are using an Azure or AWS or GCP, or even your own Kubernetes as an environment. Remember, the way I have said with the OSI layer, everything you consider here from those particular layers at the level one network. Similarly, you might have some cluster. So there is an agent which will do some kind of the component logging and all those things. So you have to monitor them. Similarly, if you are running container, which are the system elements, you will get some system logs, or and out of top of that you will be having some workloads providing some kind of metrics as well as logs, and finally your actual application, uh, you will get all these logs and metrics. So from in Kubernetes, it is more of a complete environment. That means we start from the network, then going to the machine, which I have already told about infrastructure, while I was explaining this particular OSI correlation between the components, and going to the cluster or system components. Workload component, workload is nothing but your actual containers running your application, and finally the traces or something from an application per se at layer 7, which is the presentation. Okay, so these are all things you have to remember from an OSI model, and think of what kind of monitoring strategy you need, and you tap into the each layer and get the good information, or I would say sufficient information to run your day-to-day job. Okay, and remember, even though we are learning this from a component of an Azure, if you are working in an AWS, if you are working in Google or even your own cloud, this will still be handy. The basics are same. What kind of the metrics, what kind of the logs, the way we have seen about the traces, we have seen about the audit logs with the changes, these all remain same irrespective of whichever cloud or on-premise environment you are using. Okay, so make sure you understand these. And going to in depth of Kubernetes, I think they give you at each level from the network, then they give you at the container level what you can fetch from the metrics as well as the logs, and finally at the application level. So ideally, I would say these components of an Azure monitor are integrated to log analytic workspace from the logging perspective, from collection of the metrics per se. But having said that, networking, container, infrastructure, application, those all talk about the all OSI layer, or I would say the complete platform model, right from scratch till end, where you are actually running your application or monitoring your application. So you have to get the analysis or dashboarding with the different tools out of box. Say here you will see also see the Grafana, even you have seen Prometheus. So these are the this is like how the integration is being seamless with the Azure monitor. Okay, so you can use the different tools whichever fits best for you and get this monitoring or dashboarding out of this insights. Okay, so what we have covered so far is network, storage, VM insights, and application insights, and Kubernetes insights. So these particular collection of the telemetry gives you the what the metrics you can collect, what kind of the logging information you have, and finally obviously dashboarding or reporting of that. Okay, so that is what is the collection of telemetry. Now moving ahead with the monitoring. So I think from the GitHub as a monitoring, first thing which you can see here is what kind of the GitHub insights you can get. Now this topic GitHub insights I have just already, now this is one of my repository with the DevOps, the GitHub hands-on lab. If you see and click on insights, you will get this page. Right from contributors, community standards, traffics, what kind of commits, code frequency, dependency graph, network folks. So this is available out of box for you. You just have to see and go to these particular blades uh, with the help of your whichever repository you're using. Click on insights, you get these kind of blades, all have the monitoring information. Okay, so make sure you understand these and what is available to you out of box and how this particular is being used. Okay, so GitHub Insight, I think I need not say you are using in and out, so I will not spend much time on this, but these are something which is available out of box to you. The other thing is, I think which you might not have seen or maybe using into a very little extent is the GitHub charts. Now this is based on the way you are being seen as a, hold on. Okay, so way you have seen or creating your projects. Okay, so this is relevant to the way you have seen Azure boards. Okay, you clearly categorize your iterations. First of all, you create your projects and then have the teams resources onboarded, and then you categorize your whatever the line items in form of a bug or and then what kind of the development work you are doing. And obviously it has to be the development and go live has to go through iterations, that the way you are progressing from your development environment and getting that through. So these kind of information is nothing but the charts. You have to actually have the charts of that. So in GitHub, I think they give you the way to create these charts. Okay, so if you see at the left hand side, it gives you information about how do you create the charts within your projects. So navigate to project and you have to actually click on start, new start, and type the name. So based on the projects and whatever you have a part of that, I think you should be able to configure charts the way they are showing you here. Okay, different layouts, and obviously the way I have shown you, the project will have some kind of the templates based on the iterations or the work you are doing. So again, this is not that useful, but from the exam per se, I think you should be aware of this, that this is available out of box. Okay, so that is the reason I'm just moving fast from these, because GitHub Insights and charts are not that much in use at this point of time. But I think you should be insights, I think you use day to day, but charts, I think to extent where you are using the project management stuff in line with your Azure boards, unless and until you have some the different product altogether for project management, I think you will use the charts. Okay, so for that, I think you should be aware of these two topics as well. Now, notifications. This is something which you can see out of box within your GitHub. So while I'm just opening up in the notifications for GitHub. So this is my personal account, right? So if you come to the profile and have clicked the notifications, you will be able to see that you can configure the notification where it goes and how this is configured. Okay, so you should be able to make out the actions. Okay, dependent bot alerts, any campaign mails, anything, any particular secret key or to organization, any notification of any deployment key you should be aware of in product message. So everything you are getting an alert of. Now this is something which is from my personal account. Similarly, you can go to your own account and check what kind of notifications you have configured in your own account. Similar is for your Azure DevOps. So in Azure DevOps also you have pretty much, now this I'm showing you for one project which is for 400. Now there are so many notifications right from build code. I would go reverse code, then build completes pipelines, then you release. So these kind of all the alerts and who is trying to get this, the individual members or the team. So that is where the notification will go through. Okay, so just go and configure them as a part of your notifications. By default this will be there, but if you want to get any particular, again another settings, you can configure in the delivery settings. Okay, so notifications, and if you want to add new subscription you can add, or in delivery settings you will, if you want to deliver to individual email addresses or you don't want to have the deliver it, you can just click on this or configure accordingly. So make sure you are aware of these notifications which are available out of box and how you can make the most use of whatever is available to you. Okay, so coming back, these are the small topics, but from theoretical per se, you should know from exam per se. Okay, that is the reason I'm just going to and show you how and where you can actually have them. Okay, so this completes our first topic. I'm just going back just to show you what we have completed so far. So at this point of time, we have covered this first topic, which was on giving you information on log analytics workspace and how the Azure monitor looks like, what kind of telemetry information you can get, and how the different notifications and all those things are available out of box, and the charts you can create in GitHub. Similarly, I've shown you how the notifications work in uh, the the Azure DevOps versus GitHub, and also from where you can enable the alerts, whether this is for pipeline as well. So notification is the tab where you have to go and actually see. Similarly, within the actions or pipeline, once you configure, you can configure these notifications. Okay, so this covers our first topic. Now we are moving to the another topic, which is instrumentation. This is in depth of your application insights, and it will take some time. So let's go fast and go through that particular topics as well. Okay, so I'm just coming to the, so first and foremost, we have divided the application inside in these sections because these are the different functionalities which you should be aware of from an application insights. Let me start with application insights dashboard. Okay, I'm just zooming it out so that you should be able to view out. Okay, so at firm of the topmost, I think once you have created an application insight on top of your web application, okay, you should be able to see something similar to this. Now what it gives you, at first place you are clearly able to make out the failed request, the server response time, the server different kind of request you are getting, and availability. So based on this information I can make out my application is healthy or not. This is the first observation which you get from an application insight. But how about the getting the historical data? Okay, so that is where you have a different filters at the top. Whether you want it for last 30 minutes, 1 hour, you go up to 30 days, 90 days. So that is how you can do the custom of the historical information about your application. And based on the, as I said, this is an application insight. This is more of a, the way we are talking about a workbook, and then plotting that and dashboarding it is something similar to this. Okay, so you are actually having an application inside for that particular time range, or I would say for that particular line, and then monitoring the different characteristics, failure, availability, what kind of the different parameters it is showing. So like say for right from an IP addresses, you still whatever the different traces you can make out from a latency per se, those all things you can get as a part of a dashboard. Okay, so if you see in application dashboard, this is pretty much you have. And obviously based on the filters you can configure the what the different parameters you can get out of it. And if you are accessing, as I've already shown you, you are having different sections, and where what you are trying to add the different parameters, you can obviously get these tiles. Okay, because we just have to make sure these tiles are not random. This is something which you want as a part of metrics to be monitored. Okay, so this is available to you for your application, for your application and the different parameters you're trying to monitor. Okay, how can we create customize this? To create a customize, you have to add tile. The way I said, these are all small tiles. Tiles nothing but these are a small I would say the dashboard given to you, which will show the specific metrics which you're trying to monitor. How you do that? I think you can just go to the prerequisites tutorial, create the new dashboarding. I think they have given step by step of what kind of the data. Now this, whatever I have shown you right from the query and getting those information from the different logs, all things you can do from this based on what kind of the information you want to fetch. Okay, and then you have to pin to the dashboard. It will look similar to this as a tile gallery. Creating a custom metrics also you can go through. This is all step by step. If you want, as I said, the metrics and logs are the main important things. Traces and the which were used for changes were another data uh, marts which you can select through, and depending upon what kind of information or filtering you can use the query, which is the Kusto query, and then on top of that you get to know what exactly you want to capture it and finally plot it for your own so application insights gives you all these information from a dashboard. Okay, so currently we are covering the how the dashboard looks like, and then how you can customize that dashboard to have this information. Again, from an example, say no one will tell you to create this dashboard and show to them, but then if you are doing it for your own clients, I think you should be able to make this as an informational uh, and documentation for you. Okay, so where you can go and check if anything has changed. So this was an performance matrices which you want to see. What else? So we also have an application map. Okay, now this is something which you want to do in and out based on the different components you're interacting. Okay, so as we are interacting with the different components, I should be able to see who is good, bad, and what kind of the availability, resiliency, and all those things I should be able to make out from here. Okay, so this gives me a good information. My app is actually having the database, then it is having some kind of Azure storage, then queue, and obviously the different instances running with this. Okay, so I'm able to make out that yes, these calls are going good, but where the problem is some kind of a latency of some of the instances are down. So if you see this here, two instances, right? So as of now, it looks like one instance is down. So as of now, we are running two instances. So we have a downtime of this particular. So similarly, the main app. Okay, so this particular app, I see one instances, and it is not able to cater to 14% of the traffic. Okay, so this gives me clear indication of what exactly is going wrong with this particular application. So these kind of map is very useful because it not only tells me the dependent component, but also gives me end-to-end information about what is going wrong where, where should I increase my capacity, or where should I check for whether it is a network, whether that is a storage, whether that is an instance itself is down, or whether there is some latency problem or even some configuration issues. Okay, so this is how you can actually get to the application map. Also, you can update those map components. Okay, you can go and update those map components. You can see each and every detail, and at right hand side it will give you what kind of the different, whether it is an, if it is an API level calls, I think it will give you the get sets and all those things. If it is a latency, it will also give you what kind of the networking latency it is showing. And if you drill down further to investigate those failures, you can actually come to the what kind of the error codes you're getting out of 404. Okay, so obviously not found. Okay, so these kind of exceptions and different information you can get from an application map. And finally, getting the performance, what kind of latency you are seeing, you can come to the and get for each and every I would say get request or set request, whichever transactions is being done with the help of this application, you can actually monitor them. Okay, and obviously we here we are going from the layer 7 to the bottom, but ideally it is not in hard and fast to go to that way. But you can also monitor the instances first and then go above based on the information you see in the dashboards. Okay, and you can also get the trace of what is going in the detail. So now this was the, I see this is for 404. I just go on to the details and see, want to see end to end. So with this, it is clearly giving which particular configuration is not working. Get service is not working, and for that it is clearly giving me what is the problem, whether it's getting timeout and giving me the information about these details. Okay, so there is an exception has happened, and this particular because of that this particular request is failing. Okay, so these kind of analytics, I think you can go in application map and drill down further. You can also see the logs and run the way we have seen in Kusto query language. You can run those particular timestamp and then render the time chart for that. But at this point of time, what I see from an application map is I'm able to get first obviously then application then compute, but not hard and fast. You can have the compute and application. It purely depends upon you how you want to go and fix this. But I think from an alerting and from the monitoring per se, this is what you will get out of box from an application map. Okay, now let's go and see the, I'm just closing the extra windows so that we get a clean space. Okay, so this was for application map. Now, as I said, in application insights, every particular component or whatever the blades you see is important. And this is how we do practically as well. This is not just for documentation, you also do practically, because application insights today, all the applications are web based. So this is really helpful, not only from instances but overall as well. What kind of the test you can have on top of that? Obviously these are the web applications, so it will be more on the HTTP. So you get the standard test, like we call the URL ping test. You can also have the availability. Similarly, there are few are deprecated. I think you can leave them behind. But I think at this point of time, you can clearly see what kind of the test they are running as a part of. They just put the URL and have the test frequency and success criteria. You get the 200 response or test time out 120 seconds, and you also can get the alerts enabled. Now with this, I think you are in availability section, and these are the documentation information about these test success criteria, and you can also configure the alerts. Okay, so this is what is at this point of time you see. You can monitor. We started with, if you remember, we started with the graph where the different locations were being shown. So this is where this comes from. You can have, based on the your configuration, or I would say your application being scattered around different regions, you can get that particular live map as well. Okay, so again, all publicly available information I'm showing you, so that you can always refer and even do the labs if you want to do so. Ideally, as I said, there is no labs in this exam, but you should know each and every topic, whatever we are covering as of now. Okay. Now coming to the failure, performance, and transaction. Now, how are these different? Because see, at this point of time, we are going through each and every, but while going in depth, each blade is giving you different information. So that is where I'm showing you the different, and this is something which you can see in your application insights and whatever right from now the way we have seen first is an overview which gives you a dashboard, then we really gone to the application map. Okay, then we gone to the availability, the failure. So these are different tabs or blades, I would say, which you can really drill down further and get to this particular information. Ideally from an application the dashboard also you can come here, but this is very in a specific, I would say, in a very organized way. They have given you a different blades where you can directly go and target the failures, all these availability, investigate these information out of box. Also, the way you have seen in the different insights, you have having the different tabs here. They have given you failures, view, performance, view, and transactions. So that is where you directly get the different traces, whatever you have seen above. Actually, we were coming here itself while we were in application dashboards. So make sure you understand how these are blades are related to each other, and you should be able to navigate while you do this practically. Okay, so again, uh, you can add the tile. For that you will either need a metrics or the logs which you want to correlate, and then finally have them as a part at the frequency, whether you want real time versus within 5 minutes or say 1 hour. Those all things you can set while getting this particular in the dashboard format. Okay, while real time alerts are very useful, but I think you cannot keep it very long. So make sure if something is going wrong, then only have it real time. Otherwise, collecting the logs or metrics at a particular interval is always good based on the criticality of your application. Okay, so this is what you have. You getting the telemetry. So again, while you click on this, I think it gives you pretty much everything. If you see what happens, what was the response, and then you drill down to the response, and the way we have seen, right? You actually go to that exceptions, what we're having for that configuration, something is going wrong. Okay, so this is gives you a specific home page, which is for a specific country and having load time, s- a specific load time. So this is giving you end-to-end transaction. Similarly, any transactional charts is nothing but your traces, exceptions. You can go and see exact the call stock. I think from each and every each of these results. So where we are seeing this is again the I am showing you the dashboard, right? So you are seeing this from the way we have failures. Okay. So remember, I'm just clicking on these particular and then drilling down further to these matrices. Okay, you are analyzing and further moving to the respective views in these particular charts. Okay, now coming to the live metric stream. Now again, this is more from a diagnostic if something is going wrong. Okay, and this has to be real time for you to actually make or able to know what's going wrong. Okay, so everything is, if you clearly see, this is dashboarding, this is an investigation window, this is a monitoring. So pretty much everything organized in the form where we want while we creating the monitoring strategy. So remember to navigate through these different tabs while we are also talking about this simultaneously. Okay, so this gives you incoming request, duration, failure rate, your response rate, overall health. Everything is, while you click on each of them, there is also a given telemetry of what kind of response, and then finally going through each and every response and getting to that what exactly you can get out of box. Okay, and also By default, the data is retained for 90 days. Okay, so that is what you can get through for Metric Explorer and Login and live stream. Obviously, as I said, it's purely depending upon for how much time you are streaming or getting those dashboarding information. But ideally, I would say keep it short to a week or something, unless your investigation, and then remove them, because otherwise this will create this huge traffic for you. Okay, this is for on demand. These are the different metrics which we just talked about, and then getting the diagnostic information based on. See, these are the different kind of I would say parameters you can, or conditions I would say, you can put into before getting the information from that particular logs, and then only going to those particular whatever you have put the category here. Okay, so make sure each and every log you are able to filter it out with these particular queries, and then obviously dashboarding it as we require. See, sometimes I think this information, I think if you are working already in a practical environment, I think you may already have it, but visiting the documentation is not bad. You can always come down and see what kind of information I have or already know, and then accordingly take the decision whether you want to drill down further, or the way these particular documentation is created, I think self-sufficient for you to uh, do anything, or I would say answer any question on exam from an instrumentation per se. Okay, so make sure the graphing and slicing or whatever they are showing as a part of this experience, these are nothing but the different components of the Azure monitor. And obviously an application inside is something which you need to aware of from an, because every application today is more of web application, and how it connects to right from traces and everything you should be aware of. So there are a lot of things I think to cover. To be frank, I won't be able to cover each and every topic in detail, but I think as you are seeing the in depth of these particular blades, there is a lot to cover. And for this particular, I think I have set the stage right from the monitoring strategy. What are the important components and how we have taken one-to-one, or I would say end-to-end examples. So that is what you will do in your practical client as well. Okay, so practical, while you do this monitoring strategy, you should be able to make this through. Okay, now work item integration. Now many a times what we do is anything goes wrong, we want to create an alert. So for that we want to have that any particular for any particular changes or any this, there should be a work item created. So this is how you configure work item, is what they have shown you. Okay, so, and this will clearly integrate with your project also in showing you in your dashboards. Okay, so this is how any particular high CPU uses, I think you should have a work item created and should be monitored. So this is what it is showing. So you should have either created a bug or task depending upon the criticality, and then finally, so these are small topics, but I think have a weightage based on what kind of information or work we are doing. Similarly, distributed tracing. Now, you have seen the traces from an application inside, and how this helps you is more towards SDK. Now, this topic is towards how you enable via SDK. Now, this is how the different, and depending upon your competency or the product you are using, you should have something from this, and then based on this FGK you have to enable the open telemetry. Obviously till day today, I think the tracing is what is enabled. So that is what they are telling you, and what kind of data model they have. Basically this in itself is full development integration with your Azure monitor. If you really want to get to that level, then only you go through this. Otherwise this is just as an info, like how you go and actually uh, do an SDK integration with an Azure Monitor. Okay. How you correlate this is more from development aspects. How you get an agents running and what kind of the configurations you should have in your applications to get that integrated with your monitor for the distributed tracing. So there are different examples given. Not everything will relate to your own uh, code, but then you should be able to aware that something in documentation is available as an info. Not see, as I said, not everything is from an exam point of view, but for end to end knowing, I think this is very important. Now we are coming to the last topic, which is Kusto. Now this is very important. Like what kind of, first of all, understanding this language itself, what kind of language itself it is. Obviously query language, but what you can get out of it, whether you what kind of the on what kind of the data it will run. It will run anything on structured, semi-structured, unstructured, so it covers most of what we need. Okay, then what kind of queries you can have. The queries can have a tabular, a let statement, and set statement. So these are the simple things which is out of box you should be able to make out that yes, I should be able to write these queries myself, and how I want to separate the different statements. Similarly, if you see the today we have seen for storage, right? So between this state and this state, and the state should be this, and give me the count. So this is the table information. But if you have seen, we have clearly written rendered pie chart. So below this, if I put a rendered pie chart or rendered chart, it will give me this particular here. I think doesn't make sense for a by this information doesn't make for pie chart, but I think I can at least plot some bar graph or something of that sort, or maybe the line chart. Okay, so based on the count. Okay, so this is where I think you should be able to plot it after you have the query. Similarly, the way we have written this is more from an execution per se. Okay, and you also have some of the management commands, which is nothing but having Kusto to process or modify some metadata. Okay, so this also you can have the as a query. Okay, so to be frank, just knowing the basics of what kind of the statement I can write through, and whether I can go through any of structured, unstructured, or any of the semi-structured data, then obviously writing the query and plotting the chart out of it is what I have to. So this all topics, if you see in detail, log queries in Azure Monitor. Now I'm just going in depth of that. So what exactly, if you see in workbooks, in dashboards, logic apps, PowerShell, these all things I can get through with the help of these particular whatever I have got. So there are different functions also given to you. There are also uh, the different charts you can get out of this. So it purely depends upon what kind of the competency you get through this query language. Ideally, I would say try to use out of box what is available in your Azure. It gives you directly while you click on that logs, and then try to get it will give you the query directly. So first try to use those queries and then come to the customizing it the way you want. Okay, so that's all we have for this particular session. So let's see what we have covered so far. So, from exam per se, as I said, important thing for you to note is knowing what are the tools available at first place, how they are integrated, where we are storing those particular logs and metrics is important, what kind of telemetry you are getting, and what kind of monitoring available out of box from the tool. And obviously the important tool which we covered is an application insights. Okay, so because that is where the most of the web applications are there, how we go from there to each and every request, or I would say instances, is what we have seen. What kind of the plotting, what kind of the reporting dashboards, how we can customize that all we have seen as a part of an application insights. Okay, so that's all we have for this last session for AZ400. Okay, thanks.